Put my camera on as well. Give me a second. And good evening. Thank you for joining us, both in person and virtually, for watching this recording on YouTube. My name is Derek Durazio. I am the Preparedness Grants Branch Manager and Compliance Officer at North Carolina Emergency Management. The Preparedness Grants Branch at North Carolina Emergency Management is responsible for a suite of 10 different federal and state grant programs. Many of those grant programs are what we call competitive grant programs. Not all, but most are competitive grant programs where applicants have to apply for a limited amount of funds. Usually the need or greater than the amount of available funding. And there's a competitive process where certain applicants are selected, other ones are denied funding. And this is a slide presentation we put together just to kind of provide some assistance, to answer some questions as best we can as to what we think, at least we've observed in our experience, makes a more competitive grant application. There's a whole lot of caveats that come with that. We're going to go over in a minute here, but just by way of introduction, that's what we're going to cover tonight. So this is in conjunction with our Get Your Grant On training series with the Western Branch office being held at Mitchell Community College, although we are 100% virtual tonight. So this is being recorded and we posted on our website with a YouTube video link for everybody to watch online at their leisure. Next slide, please. All right. So competitive grants, okay? We have at least these 3 competitive grant programs that we manage at the Preparedness Grants Management Branch at North Carolina Emergency Management that are competitive processes as described, and we solicit applications from sub-applicants. Those applicants or sub-applicants apply. Some get selected, some don't get selected for the amount of funding that's available. These 3 programs are typically competitive every year: CBCG, SLCGP, and NSGP. To put this in context, Preparedness Grants Branch Management Branch at North Carolina Emergency Management, we manage about 10 different non-disaster preparedness grants. NCM as a whole, we're just one section of NCM. NCM as a whole, there's 9 different sections. We manage about 20 different grant programs, most of which require a disaster declaration. Okay, so about 10 of those grants require disaster declarations, 10 do not. We manage the 10 that do not. Our total portfolio of grants is about $85 million a year that we manage, including these 3 competitive grants that you see on your screen here. We have hundreds, if not upwards into 1,000 different sub-recipients across the state, grantees across the state that we service and manage. Every county across the state is represented, mostly government entities such as counties or local governments. Also, we have a nonprofit security grant program for nonprofit organizations across the state. We don't do any kind of grants that we don't preparedness grants or any grants that touch individuals or businesses. It's strictly just government entities and nonprofit organizations who are our potential grantees and applicants for our grants. And these are the 3 competitive grant programs that we currently offer. Next slide, please. So with competitive grants, I guess the big caveat I want to say right now up front is you've seen one competitive grant, you've seen one competitive grant, right? Each one is uniquely different. You've seen one competitive grant in 1 year, you've seen one competitive grant in 1 year, right? Because even the same competitive grant can vary from year to year, right? And that's because the guidance underlying the grant can change from year to year, okay? So the committees can change, committee structures can change, selection criteria can change from year to year. So there's no one universal magic bullet we can tell you to say this is what you should follow for all competitive grants. Each grant program has unique responsibilities and requirements and unique things you should be highlighting in your application, right? Each grant year of that competitive grant has its own unique requirements as well. Sometimes the application forms themselves will change from year to year. Each grant may have a different type of application form. Each grant may require different information, ask different questions, be scored differently. So each one is a unique entity, and there's really no substitute for reading and understanding the grant guidance before you fill that application out. That's the hard work involved, right? If you really want to be competitive, some of these notice of funding opportunity that the federal government particularly publishes can be very, very long, detailed documents. Got to get your nose and read that document. Got to go on the websites, look at the websites for these grants. The federal government has websites for federal grants. We have websites for all the grants we offer. Get your nose in the website, get your nose in those notice of funding opportunities. Read everything you can about that grant program before you complete that application. And that's probably your best advice to make it competitive. Having said that, we're going to try to give you a few tips here that might apply across the board to help you. So the way it's structured, again, it'll be an application will be provided to the sub applicants to complete. It's a standard application for all of the applicants for that particular grant. Each one's not got a unique application, standard application they will get. They'll fill out those applications, turn them in by a deadline, right? All the applications that are received by the deadline that are complete applications will get scored by a review committee. All right, for CBCG, it's called the CBCG Review Committee, and there's a certain component of individuals that make up that committee. For NSGP, it's our NSGP Review Committee, and that's a smaller review committee made up of different type of individuals. SLCGP, State Local Cybersecurity Grant Program, that's a cyber grant program made up of a much larger committee of folks that score and evaluate those applications, right? So each of the different programs has their own committee structure that reviews those grants, scores them, and makes recommendations for funding. And again, many preparedness grants do not require disaster declaration. We actually have one preparedness grant program, EMPG, that we call a formulaic grant. That's just for counties, and that's not even a really competitive grant program at all. It's just all the counties get a certain amount of money each year based on a formula. So that's not competitive at all. Some grants are not competitive. Most are. This slide kind of outlines that. Next slide, please, Lisa. Okay, again, why this workshop? Again, this was requested. We've had many applicants that have come to us and say, hey, we're new to this, or, we're frustrated. We can never seem to get funding. What can you do to help us to start getting some funding or learn how we can be competitive with our grant applications? We get it. It's a frustrating process. We understand it. We want to help all applicants. At the same time, we got to be fair, right? We can't particularly help, or, we can help you with questions, right? And answer your questions about the grant, but we can't give you necessarily help making your application better than somebody else's, right? Because we have to be the neutral party that helps collect those applications and prepares them for the review committees to score them, right? So we're kind of the, the honest bystander, if you will. We can't help any one party any more than others. People ask questions, we answer them as best we can. We provide tips to everybody. We record it, put it on our website, the video like we're doing here, right? We put guidance up on our website so everybody can equally access that. But we don't try to advantage any one particular applicant over other applicants. That's why we're having this today, just to give that general guidance to everybody as best we can to help you make your applications more competitive across the board. And we're going to provide some, most important, we're going to provide some examples of applications that have been scored highly for our various grant programs. Okay. Again, with the caveat, you've seen one competitive grant application, you've seen one competitive grant application, right? Each program is different. Each year changes, okay? But these are some examples we can provide with the permissions of those applicants who have agreed to let us release them to you. And we redact out any kind of protected information. You will see what was successful applications in these various grant programs from previous grant years. And hopefully that will help you in the future. Next slide, please. All right, and that's my general introduction. I've got all those nasty caveats out of the way. Now we're going to turn over to the real subject matter experts. And Michelle Strong is one of our grants administrators. She's going to go ahead and tell us some grant writing tips and best practices. Michelle, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michelle. I am a grants manager with the Central Branch, and I am just going to go over some tips and tricks for writing a good grant application. So in regards to the application itself, the portion that's asking for the abstract, what we want you to do here is to create a concise and persuasive explanation of the priority, need, gap, or vulnerability that is being addressed or will be addressed by the grant funds that you want to receive. Clearly outline your project goals and objectives. For the budget, we use the POETI discipline. So that means if you're asking for equipment or services to be provided, we want detail of the equipment and services that you're purchasing. It's really important that you have knowledge of your purchasing guidelines to make sure you know what to purchase and what not to purchase. And an understanding that all goods and services must be purchased and received within the period of performance, or POP. So it must be within that time frame of the actual grant. Next slide. All right. And here are some best practices tips. You want to make sure that your agency is eligible to apply for this grant. You want to do that first and foremost. So you can always refer to the FAQs on the website. Familiarize yourself with the requirements of the application. So again, you want to make sure that you have a thorough understanding of what the application requires you to do. You can find that information in the notice of funding opportunity, again, on the website. Answer all questions thoroughly and provide all required documentation. If you fail to do this, then you're making yourself vulnerable to not get granted this grant money. And provide a detailed explanation of how the funding will impact your organization and the broader community. All right. Here's some more best practice tips. Use numbers to strengthen the application. So we love to see data. We love to see statistics. We want facts. We want information. You want to use SMART goals. So specific. That means we want details of your wants, your needs, and your plans. Measurable. Data that could be quantified or tracked. Actionable. So that means we want the information to be practical and achievable. You want to definitely make sure it is achievable. Relevant, that means that it pertains specifically to your goals and that it makes sense. And then timely, can be achieved within a reasonable time frame. So again, you want to make sure that this can be achieved within the POP, period of performance. Okay. We also want you to demonstrate how important your project is. Again, you always want to use details, and be impactful. You want to make sure that you get the point across of how important this project is. Have someone proofread before submitting. Never just write it and send it. Always have it proofread. Cross-train your staff on grant writing. That way you'll have multiple heads putting information into this grant application. You don't want just one person, one perspective. It's always good to have multiple perspectives. It's always good to have your entire staff trained on the ability to fill out one of these applications. And again, do not work in a silo. So again, when you cross-train your staff, you're making sure that everyone knows how to do this and that you're getting multiple perspectives and information from each and every one in your staff, because everyone will be impacted by the grant funding. Okay, and here's some helpful tips. Use the correct forms. Again, if you don't, that will delay and possibly get you rejected from getting the grant in the first place. So always use correct forms. Check the website for the NOFO. Check the website for all the information that you need. FAQs, always constantly check the website. Check the website for changes and updates. Never wait until the last day to submit. And we all know that that can be disastrous. Be mindful of hard application deadlines. Again, we're not waiting till the last minute to get this in. We know when the deadlines are, and we're going to give ourselves plenty of time to get all the information. Break up the task into smaller, manageable chunks. And again, going back to training your staff, maybe you'll dull out specific parts of the application to specific staff members. Convey concisely and precisely how the project will be completed within budget and within the POP. You don't want to overspend. You don't want to go over deadlines. And then milestones. We definitely need to know what your milestones will be. Okay. As far as budget, use quotes to enhance your application so we can see specific dollar amounts. For reimbursement grants, the grantee must purchase goods and services and submit for reimbursement. You want to make sure you submit in a timely manner. As far as match, which is not required, the grantee has the option to provide voluntary match from their own funds to complete the project. So you do have the option to do that. And that is all that I have. Thank you.
Hey, Michelle, outstanding. Great. Thank you for those words of wisdom. Very poignant. We're going to take a pause here. Tiffany, do you have any questions for us before we move on to our next grant program, SLCGP? All right. All right. Hearing no questions. Oh, there you go, Tiffany. Yep. Do you have any questions for us, Tiffany?
No, I don't have any. Thank you, though.
Thank you. All right. So seeing no questions, just to reiterate a couple points that Michelle made. Um, we need to be specific and detailed in our grant applications, but we also must be concise, right? Put yourself in the shoes of the review committee who's scoring these applications. These are human beings just like you or I, right? Sometimes they have to read upwards of over 100 grant applications and score them as fairly as they can. Do they want to read 100,000-page grant applications or they want to read 100 concisely worded 3-page grant applications, right? You get the point. Make your case, like with any other persuasive writing, as precisely and concisely as possible while still conveying all the specificity and detail required for that grant application, right? Can't emphasize enough. We don't want to overburden our grant review committees with very, very long, windy, long-worded, flowing applications when you can choose to be concise and precise and convey the same message. In my experience, what I've seen, just reviewing the work of review committees, those applicants are able to persuasively, concisely, and precisely convey the information, backing it up with relevant data and statistics, tend to be more successful than those that write really long-winded and long, detailed, kind of novels, if you will, in their grant applications, right? So make it as concise and precise as possible. Like Michelle mentioned, make sure you can get that project done within the period of performance and say how you're going to done within the period of performance of the grant. Understand these are reimbursable grants. You have to front the money up front and then you get reimbursed for it after. Make sure you're able to do that. Okay. Michelle mentioned poetic discipline. That's a category of spending, planning, organization, exercise, training, and equipment. So when you do a detailed budget, you have to list your category of spending for each item or service that you're providing under the poetic categories, right? Budget should be detailed. Make sure those those amounts you're putting in your budget are backed up with real data, real numbers, and real science, and not swags, right? Get price quotes. Understand price quotes may not be valid for certain periods of time, and by the time you actually get the grant, it might be different. But you have to have some basis to put behind those numbers in your budget, right? To make sure you have those precise and information to provide. So these are all very, very good points that Michelle provided in general for grant applications. Now we're going to turn to the specifics of each grant program. First and foremost of which is our newest grant program, SLCGP, of which Ms. Lisa Patton is our Senior Grants Manager. Lisa, take it away with SLCGP. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. And I'll keep the camera off for bandwidth on my side. The SLCG program, like Derek said, our newest grant program came into being in 2022, was our first grant award year. We now have 2023 that we're rolling out. The NOFA was published August 7th of 2023. In this slide deck, you will be able to follow that link to that. Our allocation for North Carolina was $10,813,417. Our appropriated funding, and this is across each grant year, FY22, there was 200 million, FY23, 400 million, FY24, 300 million, FY25, 100 million. Each of these years, there is a federal cost share and a match requirement. For 22, it was 90% federal, and the North Carolina Emergency Management has agreed to match on behalf of the subrecipients. So we provide the 10% match to our award for 22. For 2023, it was an 80% federal match, federal match. And then our match requirement was 20%. And again, North Carolina Emergency Management has agreed to supply that match on behalf of each subrecipient in North Carolina. Currently, these 23 awards are sitting for federal review, so we do not know who our awardees will be for 23. We expect that information to be coming in by the end of August. The SLCGP website, link also provided here, it will be updated when we are made aware of our award, and those awards will be announced.
Hey, Lisa, I'm sorry. Go back to the
Yes,
last slide, please, real
sure.
quick. Just want to clarify
Yes.
one thing. The
Yes.
information you see on the right-hand side of that slide where it says appropriated funding federal, just to be clear, I think it's obvious, but just to clearly state it, that's the total amount of funding that FEMA has given out for all states in each grant year, right?
Yes.
So that's not what we get. That's all states compete, if you will, for that amount of
Correct.
funding. Okay. So we had out in 23, for example, FEMA distributed $400 million across all states. We got $10.8 million of that for North Carolina, right? But what you can see if you're following the numbers, okay, in FY22, we got roughly 5 million. In 23, we got roughly 10, 11 million. It goes down in 24 and it goes down in 25, right? So you can kind of do the math, right? And presuppose we're going to get a little less than 10 million in 24 and a lot less than 10 million in 25, right? Just to do the math and make the predictions kind of stand true. All right. We just provide that as context to show you what the total pool of money is that will be available to all the states, and you can kind of do the math yourself and see where we're going to get less and less for the next couple of years coming up. Speaking of 24, SLCGP, me and Lisa may get to this. We expect that NOFO to be published by the end of August as well, and we'll be soliciting subrecipients for that, hopefully in the fall of 2024. So stay tuned for that. That information has been updated on our website. Let you know that's coming out. Always stay tuned to that website for the latest information about SLCGP. Take it away, Lisa. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Yes, and you're exactly right. And another thing that you can see is as those appropriated funding decreases, it's going to be more competitive. So it's more important that you do write a competitive grant application. So for the FY23 SLCGP, the process from grant application to approved grant award, it actually goes through an appointed cybersecurity review committee. They work on application scoring, and then once they make selections of strong applications, these applications are sent to FEMA CISA to review and do final approvals on the recommendations. FY22 SLCGP, we have an example of an approved project, and if you'll give me just a moment, I can open that application to share with you. It's just going to take 1 second. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah, Lisa, it's all good. I think you maximized it too, so it's looking good.
Awesome. Okay, so we have here the County of Beachville who decided to apply for an SLCGP award in 2022. One thing about the applications is you do want to make sure that we have accurate names of the points of contact and emails. We also need the name of your finance person, phone numbers. Just make sure that all of that is correct. Their application title was Cybersecurity Policy and Procedure Implementation to access, create, and implement policies and procedures that will help protect data, provide continuity of service, and protect our information systems from cyber attacks. So you want a good title, a strong title for your project. You want to be pretty precise with your purpose in this section of an application. As for your project objective, SLCGP requires 1 of 4 objectives to be met with each application, so you have 4 to choose from. And they also require 16 elements, of which you can choose 1 or more. This particular applicant chose quite a few. If we go down to the project narrative, I won't read this line by line, but you can see that they've provided a very strong and descriptive description in their narrative. They have a very strong investment strategy. And I'm not just sharing with you an application. This was a a well-written application that was awarded, and we have removed and redacted all identifiers in this application. The next piece, you can discuss collaboration with other cybersecurity agencies such as the FBI, and other agencies. And then in their budget narrative, while this was brief, it was to the point, and they followed up with their milestones, what they were going to do in the 23 grant year, what they were going to do in the 24 grant year within the period of performance for that 22 grant. They discussed the impacts and outcomes of what their project proposal would provide. And they were very descriptive with that. And then once they come to the POETI and the budget breakdown, again, the POETI is the planning, organization, training, or exercise cost. They selected planning and wrote assessment and development of cybersecurity policies and procedures and initialization of dual factor authentication for $38,000. They did the same with their training category, gave a description and gave a price, and same with organization with the total cost down below. So it breaks it up into each section on this application as well. They have the option to provide additional information. Here they didn't, but there is room to provide additional information if you don't have room up at the top part of the application. This is what we call a certification page, where they must acknowledge all of these statements in order to submit the application, just like it includes complete and accurate information. There's some additional information in there regarding environmental and historic preservation form. And so they're just acknowledging that they have read these pieces of the application and are certifying it's a true and complete and true application. They also, for SLCGP, have the option to check this box if they consider it to be sensitive information in the application. But again, we did redact the application. You cannot tell whose application this is. So I will stop sharing this screen and we will go back. Yes.
Hey, Lisa.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Can you go back to that screen, please, real quick, just to make a couple fine points on that?
Sure. Give me 1 second to make sure it's open again.
Yeah.
I closed it too quickly.
I should have caught you before. Yeah, my bad. Sorry.
No, I was quick on the draw to shut that up. So it's okay. Let me see if it's going to allow me to open it again. Here we go. It's just taking a little time.
Yeah, I think I see the corner of it there. I'm going to bring it back up and maximize it, please. Great. So you see this says County of Beachville on it. Again, what happened was, instead of redact, this is an actual real application from a real applicant. There's no such thing as County of Beachville, right? Instead of redacting out information, we just simply change the name to kind of protect the innocent, right? There's no such thing as County of Beachville in North Carolina, but this is an actual real successful application for the 22 SLCGP program, right? That doesn't mean it's successful for 24 program coming up, or was successful for 23. As a matter of fact, for 23 SLCGP, the application form itself changed. It went from a PDF form to a Microsoft online form, Microsoft Forms online form, right? So again, this just shows you some principles you could apply, but each grant year is different, okay? But this is an actual successful application. We just changed the names for FY24, or excuse me, FY22 SLCGP. Again, you saw all the information Lisa presented while the information was thorough. It wasn't War and Peace either, right? It wasn't written to be really, really long-winded. It was still concisely stated and summarized, right? So that's a very important point of this application. You saw a very detailed budget, realistic milestones, and a time frame which you completed within the period of performance of the grant. So this is a great sample application to look at. The other thing I want to give a caveat on, okay, because sometimes we have some cagey applicants sometimes, right? And they might think, well, let me try to game the system, all right? Let me try to submit a really cool application saying all this cool stuff. I'll get my money, then I'll request to modify the scope of my project once I get money and change to something completely different, okay? Can't do that, okay? when you submit your application, you're certifying on the certification page at the bottom of the application that's complete and accurate and truthful. All right. We don't play the bait and switch game. All right. Because that would not be fair to the other applicants who are applying, may not get funded on it. Okay. So when you submit a project, be very mindful and cognizant of this is the actual project you want to complete with these funds. Don't think you're going to apply for one thing and then try to change it after you get funding to something else. We can't do that. We're not allowed to do that. Okay. We can make very minor scope modifications, but nothing changing major projects or scope modifications after you get funded. So when you write this application, make sure it's for the actual specific goods or services that you are going to purchase with those funds. We don't do the bait and switch later. Thanks, Lisa.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to minimize it this time in case we need to refer back to it. And I will just point out that any communications, questions about the SLCGP program can be written to slcgp@ncdps.gov. And I'll just stand by for any questions. Okay, hearing none, I believe our next presenter is Janine Childs for the competitive building or the capacity building competitive grant program. Take it away, Janine.
Good evening. Thanks so much, Lisa. I'm also going to minimize my camera to reserve bandwidth. We are having some issues with power because of the storm. So thank you all. Okay, Lisa, I'm ready to go. One thing I want to tell you about the CBCG program is that we are the only state-funded competitive grant program that's in our current portfolio of grants for the preparedness grants branch. Super excited about this program. It started back in 2022. And as we all know in NC emergency management, that emergency events happen and end on the local level. This grant is to provide funding to counties who have a population of less than 230,000 to assist them to build their capabilities and close gaps. This is very important. I really appreciate how the grant focuses on the counties with a lower population. Often they're in rural areas and areas that do not have a high density population and a high income percentage rate. So I'm ready for the next slide, Lisa. Thank you. Here you will see, we just wanted to show a little bit about how the CBCG grant started. Our first year, we had about a little over $3 million. The second year, it increased to over $5 million. And then unfortunately, in our year 3, which was 2024, our budget was reduced to 1.9 million. So as a grant program that is funded by the legislature, we depend solely on those funds. The program does not require a match. Our grantees are not required to match what they provide and to bring any monies to the grant, just solely from the funds from the state appropriations. So at the same time, that puts us at a disadvantage because these funds are not dedicated recurring resources. That is a challenge for us. We know the Department of Public Safety and North Carolina Emergency Management, that is one of the goals that they're working hard towards, to getting us secured, dedicated, reallocated funds. Thank you, Lisa. Next slide, please. Here's just a little recap of our years 1, 2, and 3. For year 1, talked about that $3 million funding. We had 60 applicants and 24 projects were awarded. And the picture over here to the right is an example of one of the trailers that was funded from Perquimans County. It was a mobile command trailer. For year 2, we had funding of 5.6 million, 70 applications, and then 37 projects. These 2 years are in the closeout stage for their grants. And if you look at the picture on the right, this is Avery County. They had a very creative mass care animal sheltering trailer project that both of these projects have built capacity in their local communities. So we're very excited about that. And we thank these counties for sharing this information for us. Next slide, please. And here we are at year 3. And this year we are off to a great start. We have our MOAs in process. Our counties are working very hard for the 19 projects that were awarded, and we're really looking forward to seeing the impact that we'll have with them. So thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about our application and the scoring matrix. And for FY24, our CBC notice of funding opportunity. Lisa, do you have that available, or do I need to share screen?
If you could share screen, I don't see it in the folder here.
Okay, awesome. Okay, here is our application that we use for 2024. This is found on our CBCG website. I'm sorry, our notice of funding. It's on our CBCG website. Very detailed application. One of the things I wanted to point out to you is when we talk about looking particularly for things that are going to make your project stand out, here in the program description, it very clearly identifies target priorities. When you're writing a competitive grant application, be sure that when you select a target priority that you are able to detail how your project is going to fit the needs of your local community while meeting that target priority. Also, if there are needs that have been identified from previous events where you came in a situation and there were things that were needed that were not available and you had to request them through the web EOC process, that will give an example of your needs for the local counties. It's very important that you do that. You can select multiple of these target priorities. You just have to give the detail of what you're doing, how you're doing, and how it's impacting the local, and how you're going to be able to sustain that project. We also talk about, just to bring to your attention, we do not allow pre-award costs. So that would mean any costs for the project that you embarked upon prior to the award, those expenditures are not reimbursable. So we ask people to ensure that when they are starting their project, that it's after the period of performance has begun and the MOA has been accepted. Okay, so when you look at, I tried to maximize this pretty good. Your project budget, one thing is important to make sure that you detail what you're doing in your budget. For example, if you were looking at enhancing your EOC and you were asking for large screens, you were asking for tables and chairs, things to make your EOC have the ability to communicate with people and teams who are out in the field, you need to say and show this in your budget. So I would say wish to purchase 5 60-inch LCD flat screens. So I would recommend going out and getting a bid for those flat screens, going to get a quote, because you can say, hey, this is how much the cost we found the cost to be at this time for these items. Okay. Another thing is when we are looking at answering questions, and these are a lot of the items that we're going to go over in 1 second regarding the rubric, that I recommend you pay attention to the areas that have the largest point values. Focus on these first. So how are you going to address the gap or the priority? What is the target how are the target priorities addressed, and what is the timeline of activities or milestones? Focus on answering the bigger point value items first, and then going back and building with your lower point value items, project sustainability, being sure to say how you're going to sustain that project, because understanding that CBCG grants are non-renewable. We're giving money as a seed for your project or for a capability that you need. And please say back to us how the county is going to be able to sustain that. Okay, And as Derek mentioned, our review process is handled by a committee. That committee is comprised of individuals who are subject matter experts, and our team in our branch work and advise them in that capacity. So now I'm going to show you a little bit about our scoring rubric. And this rubric was also on our website and advertised for our individuals who were applying to utilize. So when you're looking at, these are what we were saying, the point values here for each section. And then you want to look at, okay, the very high, you want to make sure that your responses are in this realm of green, being very high. And the way you do that is looking at the questions to consider. For example, here, if I'm going to start with methodology to address the gap or priority. Is each section in the application completed? Is there sufficient detail provided? Do you, as an evaluator, that would be for the committee, do you have a clear understanding of the project? So here is where Michelle mentioned earlier, have a team with multiple people involved from different perspectives. Maybe that person is not an EM person, maybe they are a budget person, or they are an external communications person. Have them to read over and be able to answer these questions or consider them when they're looking at your grant application. That would be a big help. I would say here, based on your knowledge and experience, does the plan to address the gap sound appropriate? Very, very important. So when the committee's scoring, and when you are looking at that, look at these questions to consider. What is a very high? What scores very high? So again, looking at methodology. In order to get 25 points, let's see, the methodology to address the gap provides comprehensive and thorough methods to correcting the deficiency in referencing specific best practices from local, state, or federal guidance or documented best practices. That gives you a 25. So unfortunately, if you do not give a 25 level answer, you have opportunity for these numbers, which you want to not have happen. You want to try to score in the very high, utilizing these. So if you have a very low response, it is the methodology did not convey a logical approach or did not adequately address a specific gap or priority. Okay, Lisa, can we go back to the slides for a second, please? Thank you. Are there any questions while we're doing that I can answer before I pull up the application? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had another slide left, Lisa. Sorry about that. Okay, I do have an application that I can share with you all. Let me get that going. I do apologize. I started working from my vehicle this evening. Okay. All right, here's a project where the county, and this county did give us permission to share their application. I did go through and I pulled out any county identifiable information, just so you are aware. That's kind of to protect the innocent in this process. So they were looking at an animal sheltering capability. So one of the things that's important is what they said here. The county struggles to provide adequate care for companion animals due to lack of suitable interior space as well as appropriate ready-to-deploy equipment. And we all have learned that people are less prone to evacuate when they need to during an emergency if there is not space for them to bring their animals. So they have said here, they have their shelter will hold 500 survivors, but less than 10 companion animals. So now they want to say through the use of the animal sheltering trailer approach, they're going to build their capacity to shelter animals during all hazard emergencies. And they went on further to say that they are a nuclear plant risk county, and there's a potential for sustained evacuation due to release from the power plant. Which is also a link back to how they are going to fulfill the gaps. And here, to close it out, they did a good job saying the project would also allow our jurisdiction to have the ability to support large-scale animal-centric emergencies, to include animal hoarding cases and overflow isolation and quarantine space in the event the county animal shelter becomes overloaded. So here they're showing that not only are they looking at the need for evacuations, but in the event of an issue with the county animal shelter, they're able to provide backup support. Okay. Now here, I really enjoyed this application. It was one of a very high scoring. They were very clear about their gaps and their priorities. Even though this is only 10 points, they put it here in detail, but then they broke it out further in the 30-point area. So how are they going to do this? They're purchasing the equipment. The county's going to be more prepared. They're going to have increased mass care and human services capacity. Great application, resiliency initiatives. And then they talk about the THIRA that they addressed above. Okay, so how are they going to sustain this? They're going to sustain it with their local funds. Exactly what the committee wants to see. Here again, how does the project support their priority? They're going to be able to adequately and appropriately shelter large number of individuals as well as animals. And let's take a look at their budget and their timeline. Their timeline was great. They broke down what they want to do. They're going to get quotes. They're going to get bids in that first quarter. Second quarter, they're going to start working with a vendor. They've already gotten a purchase order. They're going to construct the trailer, the equipment that is not provided by the vendor. They're going to purchase elsewhere. They're going to be able to wrap all of this up by the end of the POP. They're developing standard operating procedures and training their people for utilizing the trailer. And if you look down here at their budget, this is what their unit cost would be. Here, they're asking for $65,000 in equipment. Now, although a match is not required, the county was able to provide some funds to support the project. So here's their project match, and then the total amount of the project. Very great, very good way to do a grant application. And they spelled out even further how their match was going to be calculated by the EM specialist and the EM director participating in this project and their time and the hours. I'm not going to go into projects 2 or 3. This was at a time when we allowed multiple projects to be submitted in a grant cycle. Okay, so that's all I have for CBCG. I hope you've learned a lot about best practices for writing your competitive grant application. If you have any further questions regarding CBCG, please reach out to us, our CBCG inbox, as well as our Janine.Childs or Amanda.Thaxton at ncdps.gov. And just one thing to say, the application that I showed you was an application that was pre-Salesforce. For fiscal year 24, all of our applicants had to enter their applications in Salesforce, and our review committee reviewed them in SharePoint. And to wrap the whole thing up, our team, basically, we're doing the MOAs right now, and they're going out to all of the people who were granted awards. So thank you so much tonight.
Outstanding, Janine. Thank you. That's a great presentation on CBCG. And just to continue on Janine's point about Salesforce, so we've had other training sessions regarding Salesforce, including one on CBCG earlier today. Essentially, the FY24 CBCG program and beyond are all going to be in Salesforce. FY23 CBCG and before are the legacy systems that you've seen an application for here this evening. Okay, so it's a split system. We shifted to Salesforce starting with 24 CBCG in January this year. So as we move forward, all the applications from 24 forward will be in Salesforce. All post-award management, if you're selected for funding, will be in Salesforce. We have separate trainings available for that. They'll be posted on the website, and more trainings to come on that in the future. Thanks, Janine. Moving on, next slide, Lisa. I believe we have NSGP, if I'm not mistaken, Nonprofit Security Grant Program.
Yes, sir. And before I go to that slide, I think we've had a few more people join us. If they could put their name, title, and agency in our chat so that we can keep track of folks that have attended this training.
Outstanding, thank you. And I should take a pause again. Are there any other questions from the audience so we can answer before we move on to NSGP? All right, seeing none. NSGP with Mr. Bradley Garrett, our program manager for the NSGP grant program. Brad, take it away, sir.
Thank you, Derek. Good evening, everyone. We're going to speak about the Nonprofit Security Grant Program and the application process. Next slide, please. Okay. First of all, we have to let you know that the Nonprofit Security Grant are for nonprofit agencies. So you have to be a 501c3, and that's designated by the IRS. You have to be exempt under Section 501A of the code to give you that. Many nonprofits have a certificate showing that they are. Most houses of worship are inherently 501c3s. Okay. Okay. For NSGP and to give you an idea of what's going on with that, there are the nonprofit security grant has two funding streams. The first is the NSGP stateside, which is the entire state except the UWASI area. And in North Carolina, we do have a UWASI. It's the Charlotte area. And the UWASI is comprised of Mecklenburg County and the 7 surrounding counties. And we do have a slide, I think, that shows you those counties, or if you'd like to know, if you're curious, we can give you that information. Okay, the most important thing about this grant, you must be able to demonstrate through this application that your organization is at high risk of a terrorist or other extremist attack. Derek pointed out earlier that all of our other preparedness grants are for like our county agencies or state governmental agencies. This is for nonprofit organizations. So we consider these our external partners. Could you go to the next slide, please? Okay. This is a chart to show you how the funding for this program has increased since 2019. As you can see, 2019, the total award was $60 million. State of North Carolina, we received $440,000. In 20, it increased to $90 million. We received $1.1 million. 21, it increased to 180, 3.3. 22, it increased again to 250 million. Our we received here in the state 4.1 million. In 23, we had a significant jump. Funding increased to 305 million, and we received 6.1 million. This year, the total funding is 420 million. What happened was the original funding for the grant was 274 million. Right before the applications were due, FEMA came up with a supplemental funding stream. They added additional 160 million onto the funding, so it increased to 420, and we're projecting for the fiscal year 24, we should receive $10.5 million in that range, possibly more. So you can see the growth of the program, and also the growth here within the state of the program. So we're very excited about this grant and look forward to the continued growth. Next slide, please. Okay. These are the funding sources. I spoke about the two different funding streams, the NSGP Urban Initiative. That's the UWASI area. Okay. The UWASI area, UWASIs within the country, there's 41 UWASIs. And for this grant, it is competitive, as Derek pointed out before. The UWASI side of this grant is highly competitive because the UWASIs, you compete against all the other UWASIs throughout the country. And we're talking New York City, Los Angeles, Dallas, Houston, all the major cities. So it's a very competitive side of the grant. Then on the state side, if you are applying on the state side, you compete against all the other NSGP state applicants here in the state of North Carolina. So that's everything outside here in North Carolina. It's everything outside of the Charlotte area. Okay, next slide. Okay, funding amounts for NSGP, UASI, and state applicants can, with one site may apply for up to $150,000 for that site. Okay, both types of applicants with multiple sites may apply for up to $150,000 per site, up to 3 sites. That gives you a maximum of $450,000. Now, there are outliers and unique situations where there's organizations that have, say, 3 locations within the UASI and 3 locations within the state. They could apply for all 6, but only for a total of $450,000. You cannot exceed the $450,000 maximum. Okay, thank you, Jenny. Next slide. Okay, highlights from fiscal year 24 NOFO, the vulnerability assessment. This grant is based off the vulnerability assessment. You must have one performed for your location to point out what your vulnerabilities are, where your gaps are, where you need to build on your capacities. It is the heart of the application. And this application here is called the investment justification. So you can do a self-assessment yourself. You can have local law enforcement come out and do an assessment. A lot of organizations have like security people that on site, and they can do the assessment. But it's a good thing that you do a thorough assessment, because this is what you're going to be basing your IJ off of. And IJ, we call that just the investment justification. Okay, then we have the review process. The review process, we have a team, a review committee. It's made up of people, usually it's made up of a couple grant managers and a few other senior staff members in emergency management. This past year, FEMA came out where the UASI area has to be scored. The UASI applications were scored by people in the UASI, from our UASI area. So that was unique this year. Okay, and the application scoring. The application has a series of questions, and each question has a point value based off the points, up to a total of 40 points for the application. But this application for you, the NSGP grant, is unique because FEMA gives additional points for first-time applicants, and also they use a website called CGIS. If you are in what is designated as a disadvantaged area, you can go to this website. You can put in the address of your location that you're applying for, and the website will let you know if you are in one of these designated disadvantaged areas. And FEMA gives a 15-point bump for that. We use the scoring matrix. FEMA provides that for us. That's something that we provide. It's readily available when the NOFO is released at grants.gov. But we strongly try to emphasize the scoring matrix for you guys. Next slide, please. Okay, one of the highlights is the on the 24 application was the budget drop-down list. That is the equipment, the AEL list. For this, FEMA tried to make it easier for nonprofits, not really familiar with the FEMA application process. They give you 14, I believe it was 14 different AELs to choose from. Makes it a lot easier. It gives you the AEL, then you give reasoning why, what you're using it for, and the vulnerability or that it's addressing. The budget narrative, that is another area where you have to spell out. That's the area that you're giving the reasoning why, and you're also putting an amount of value on what you're asking for. But these things that you're asking for and you're putting this amount to are, again, based off of the vulnerability assessment. The first-time applicants, I pointed that out, they're given a 10-point bonus. and then 15 for the disadvantaged areas using CGIS. Okay, next slide. Okay.
Brad, at this time, would you like me to pull up your application, your sample application?
Would you please? I'm sorry, I thought we had a slide that took us to that. Okay, could enlarge that. Okay, this is the investment justification. As you can see, one thing that we found out this past grant season was subrecipients were going and finding the applications. But if you look down here in the third paragraph, it kind of points out the year that this grant is for. So if you were applying for an FY24 application, but you used the 23 application, FEMA didn't accept it. So it's very important that when we give you the sites or we give you the links to go to pull up these applications, that you use those links. You could write the greatest application, but if it's on the wrong form, it will not be accepted. Okay, you can scroll down, Lisa. Okay, some work. Okay, right here is fine. Of course, we had to heavily redact this application to protect this applicant. They were gracious enough to allow us to use their application. So as you can see, part one is basically just giving the sub-applicant's information. Very simple, your name, your legal name, okay? If you have a legal name, but you're doing, you have a DBA, please, when you fill out this application at this point, because pretty much FEMA's used this application now for the last 3-4 years. Don't foresee it changing for FY25, but it possibly could. But even if it does, the name of your organization is going to be there. Please, if you have a legal name, so legal name, DBA, whatever your DBA name is. Okay. And also, like I said, if you have you have to specify if you have, like you have one location, but you're applying for the different buildings on the campus. You have to specify the building that this application, because you have to apply for each building. Say you have 3 buildings and you want to get grants for each building. You have to specify the building A, building B, education building, sanctuary, whatever it is. Okay, so this is another big question here. Is the building owned or is it leased or rented? Because if it is leased or rented, you got to have permission. Okay, so you can go down. It's self-explanatory, this part of the application. Okay, Lisa, go down. Okay. All right. Are you, like I said, are you the only nonprofit in the building? Yes or no? It's pretty self-explanatory. If it's yes, no, you just keep going. Okay, based on the mission. So this is where you would start to fill in some of the answer to the questions. And basically this question here is just answering what your mission statement is, because mission statement is also part of the application. Vulnerability assessment, the investment justification, and the mission statement. Those are considered a fully developed application for FEMA. Now for 24, this year we use Salesforce. So all of these documents had to be uploaded to Salesforce. Okay, so it's sort of like a 2-step process. You registered with Salesforce, you applied for the grant, then you uploaded these documents. Okay. All right, so the next one, and all these things are drop downs. These questions have drop downs. They just don't have them here. Okay, so go down. This would be a drop down there. Okay, this here, we're speaking about, are you a 501c3? Okay, then are you eligible? A UEI number. Okay, UEI numbers are necessary for this grant. For this year, as of the 23 as well, you did not need the UEID number to apply for the grant, but in order to receive funding, you must have it. So if you don't, you go to SAMS.gov, get your UEID, also register at SAMS.gov and get that, and be working on getting it during the application process if you are going to apply. All right, And this is where it asks if you are in the UASI. Okay, go down. Once again, self-explanatory. And here, please describe the location symbolic value, okay, as a highly recognized national or historical institute landmark that renders the site. So this is where you start answering the questions. This is where you have to start being very concise in your answers, because there is a character limitation for one thing, and you don't, like Derek pointed out, it's not writing a novel here. You're just being concise and to the point, answering the question that you are being asked. Okay, so if your organization or if your denomination makes you a highly recognizable national organization, you spell that out here, answer the question as concisely as possible. What you're trying to do, particularly for NSGP, is you're trying to show that your location is at high risk. But based on the fact of your denomination and what's going on nationally, statewide, within your city, within your county, within your city, these are also factors that make you highly recognizable. Okay. Okay, go down to the next. Okay, then we have the next question. All right. Please provide the current, ongoing, at least 3 years for which your organization has been involved. What FEMA wants to see, because this is like a partnership grant, FEMA is trying to build partnerships between the local and the nonprofit organization. So it's important that you have already established some type of recovery, response, protection outlets with local government, with local entities, state entities. So you wanna, if you're not doing it, you wanna shelter in case of a storm. You wanna feed. You wanna work along with other emergency management agencies within your local government. So these are partnerships that you need to establish now for next year, so that at least you can say you have them already established if you don't have them already. Okay. All right, so this is where we get into how you demonstrate the threats, the vulnerabilities of your organization. Okay. Threat A. In considering a threat, please describe. So as you can see, this organization broke down their local threat. They gave incidents, they gave dates, they named what's going on. They went and then they broadened it to the state threats against organizations, and then they went to the national. So, like I said, they internalized for that particular location, and then they showed how, because of their affiliation, how it affects and how they could be at threat because of those things. Okay, vulnerabilities is next. Okay, you describe the vulnerabilities, and like I said, as you can see, they used local sheriffs, and then they went out and they also spoke to their threat assessment. Okay, so that's pointing out the vulnerabilities based off of the threat assessment. Okay, and the potential consequences. Okay, what a negative effects would be associations, assets, systems, or other function if damaged, destroyed, or disrupted by a terrorist or other extremist attack. And they went and pointed out, of course, death, okay, injury or death, okay, emotional, the disruption, loss of the center to the community, the untenable financial burden, okay, loss of diversity, no city center, okay, further embodiment, racism, culture and organizations, damage to the public perception. That's very important. A terrorist attack is targeted to create fear, not only with this organization, but also within the community that the organization is in. So these are very important things to look out. And this is a very well constructed, because they're hitting all the points that the question is asking. Okay, Let me go down to section 4. Okay, target hardening. This is the section where you're going to point out what you're asking for, the projects you're asking for. You're going to specify, well, we need fence so much, and this is the cost. Okay, so now, and this is all based off of the vulnerability assessment. What's the need? What do you need to strengthen your location? Okay, so you can go down. Here is the section where you, now these are all drop downs over here. The AEL number and title, equipment project and activities, these are all drop downs. Okay, you just drop down, and this is the vulnerability that they address, and then you give an estimate for the cost. Okay, you can go down. You can ask for M&A up to 5% of what you're requesting. A lot of organizations don't do it, but I kind of do. I say at least I kind of recommend that you do. So whatever you're asking for, you can ask for M&A to help assist in managing and running this grant. These are milestones, historical preservation, historical planning and historical preservation review, the EHP. If you are screwing anything into a wall, attaching something to the building, moving dirt outside, you have to submit EHP screening form. Now that's another form. Once you are granted the award, once you are awarded the grant, that's something that we go through at that point. But you cannot start work until this review is complete. So, and that factors into your milestones. So as you can see, the milestones based off of the projects that they have. You got to remember this is a 3-year grant. So you use your start and completion days within that 3-year time period. Okay, next. Okay, who's going to manage the program? So of course, the name, phone number, address, and experience as a project manager. Please, just do not put someone down on this because they're a volunteer and they're willing to help. Find someone within the organization that has experience. You may want to put a couple people down as co-managing, but it's very important that you have people who can manage something like this, because this thing, time-wise, could be 3 years. The number of projects, as you can see, the number of projects that this organization had going on. You might have different things being done at the same time. So you're going to need someone skilled in managing projects. Okay. And describe the measurable outcomes, outputs and incomes that we describe. So you just talk about the outcomes, what you're looking for, what this is going to do for your facility, how this is going to work for you, how you're going to make this work as far as getting these projects taken care of, how you're what this investment is going to do for you. The on the history. This here is have you been funded before? This is the other part of the additional bonus points. Has your organization received NSCP funds in the past? No, so that automatically gets you those 10 extra points right there. Okay. Next. Okay, and this is the POC, the point of contact. So this person, of course, you want the name, full name, the position title, the email address. Please, please, please make sure the email address is correct. Please, because this is how we'll contact you. Okay, and the phone number.
And Brad, I think that's the end of the investment justification application. Would you like me to share the scoring matrix now?
Yes, it is the end of the application, Lisa. Yes, please. Okay. Now this is the scoring matrix for fiscal year 2023. The application, the questions themselves didn't change for 24. So this was the same matrix that was used for the 24 application. So as you can see, it's a series of questions. And the first, this is just the information. Please provide all the, this is giving your organizations, and I think it's really, how can you not provide the information? So that's just for me. Question 2 is the background. As you can see, the scoring matrix on this question is up to 3 points. The applicant provided a full, clear, and effective description of the organization. That gets you 3 points. If it's adequate, you get 2. If it's poor, you get 1. If you do not provide a description, you get a 0. So that shows that every question needs to be answered. Michelle pointed it out best, I think, that you should have people looking this application over. You should read it. You should make sure, based off of this matrix, going back to the matrix and looking and asking, is this a full, clear, and effective description that we're providing for this question? And if not, then you go back over it and redo it again. Okay. So as you see, these questions only work 2 points here. The third question, you can go down. Highest scoring total on a question is 5 points. Did you, especially here, now we're getting into the risks, the important, the meat and potatoes of this application. Did the applicant discuss specific threats or attacks against nonprofit organizations or closely associated? Again, you're trying to focus this thing on your particular organization, that particular location, closely related. So whatever closely related to show that there is a chance of a risk. Okay, so again, 5, you provide multiple, detailed, and specific threats. 4, provide a good discussion. Provide adequate. So as you can see, the more detailed, the more specific that you answer the questions, the higher the score will be. Okay. 5. And again, all of these are your 5-point questions. So again, it's the same thing. For this question, considering vulnerabilities, how well did the applicant describe the organization's susceptibility and destruction capacity, exploitation by a terrorist or other extremist attack? So in order to get that, you have to provide clear, relevant, and compelling description, right? A good description, adequate. You definitely want to focus on these questions. This, like I said, this is the heart of the application. This is where the scoring, the most scoring opportunity to score high is on these questions. Then you have the facility hardening. That's a 3-point question. And I don't want to go through reading all the questions. I'm just trying to show with the matrix how the scoring is, what you need to do. This is not an application that you can just go and just fill out and think, okay, you're done. Thought needs to be put into this. It needs to be really worked out. It needs to be thought through. Okay, can you go down, Lisa? Oh, that's pretty much it as far as scoring with the questions. And like I said, the other questions have scoring, but toward the end of the applications, those questions are only like 1 or 2 points. And I'm not trying to make light of this, only 1 or 2 points, because all points are important. But definitely you have to work on this application. This is nothing that you can just rush through, think you can send it in or I'm done. Because of the competitive nature of this and the fact that we are getting more and more applications every year. For FY24, we submitted 137 applications between state and UASI. It was 98 for the state side, 39 for the UASI. So, and it's going to increase every year. So the competition is getting more and more involved. And it is important that you give yourself an opportunity to compete, because low scoring applications really don't even make it past our review committee to FEMA. That's how it is. So yeah, that's that. Okay. That's pretty much all I have. If there's any questions.
Outstanding, Brad. Thanks for that presentation. Very descriptive and detailed for our NSGP applicants. All right. And I believe that is all we have for this evening's presentation. Looks like we're right on schedule, a little over an hour and a half. Do we have any questions from the audience about any of the material we've covered so far? Right, great. Well, the plan moving forward is we'll get this recording converted to a YouTube video, and we will get it out on our grants websites when it's posted for those who are not here to be able to watch it. And I believe this concludes our GYGO training activities for the Western Branch Training Week this week. We thank all those who have attended our trainings and look forward to having future trainings in conjunction with other branch training weeks in the very near future. We'll leave you with this last slide here, which is just a contact slide, so you can kind of see who are the grant managers assigned to each of the different branches with a map of the state. And you can see the different grants that we cover in our branch. And if these slides are provided, these are actually linked to hyperlinks to the websites for those grants, along with our general inquiries email box of NCM grants wanted in ctps.gov. So leave you with that last slide. We thank you for attending in your time, either attending tonight or watching this video on your own time. And we are available if you have need any help or concerns or address any issues with your parents' grants needs through NCM. Thanks, folks. Have a great evening. Goodbye. I'm going to stop the recording now.